And we're continuing with The Murders in the Rue Morgue by Edgar Allan Poe. This is a companion series to Multiverse of Geekdom's videos of Study in Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He is reading about Sherlock Holmes. I am reading about Augustine Dupin, who, when looked at an apartment where a murder happened, made a very long speech about that murder and did a practical test with the narrator wherein he had to hold his hand over some fingerprints on a piece of wood about the size of a human throat, realized human hands couldn't fit there. Before that, he had showed him some hairs that were not human. Then he showed him an article about an orangutan, and our narrator declared that he had figured out what had happened in this murder, and it is there where we will pick up the narrative. "The description of the digits," said I, as I made an end of the reading, "is in exact accordance with this drawing. I see that no animal but an orangutan of the species here mentioned could have impressed the indentations as you have traced them. This tuft of tawny hair, too, is identical in character with that of the beast of Cuvier. But I cannot possibly comprehend the particulars of this frightful mystery. Besides, there were two voices heard in contention, and one of them was unquestionably the voice of a Frenchman." "True, but you will remember that the expression attributed almost unanimously by the evidence to the voice, the expression 'Mon Dieu,' under the circumstances, has been justly characterized by the witnesses Montagny, the confectioner, as an expression of remonstrance or expostulation. Upon these two words, therefore, I have mainly built my hopes of a full solution of the riddle. A Frenchman was cognizant of the murder. It is possible, indeed, it is far more than probable, that he was innocent of all participation in the bloody transactions which took place. The orang-outang may have escaped from him. He may have traced it to the chamber, but under the agitating circumstances which ensued, he could never have recaptured it. It is still at large. I will not pursue these guesses, for I have no right to call them more, since the shades of reflection upon which they are based are scarcely of sufficient depth to be appreciable by my own intellect, and since I could not pretend to make them intelligible to the understanding of another, we will call them guesses then, and speak of them as such. If the Frenchman in question is indeed, as I suppose, innocent of this atrocity, this advertisement, which I left last night upon our return home at the office of Le Monde, a paper devoted to the shipping interest and much sought by sailors, will bring him to our residence." He handed me a paper, and I read thus: "Caught in the Bois de Boulogne, early in the morning of the morning of the murder, a very large, tawny orang-outang of the Bornese species. The owner, who is ascertained to be a sailor belonging to a Maltese vessel, may have the animal again, upon identifying it satisfactorily and paying a few charges arising from its capture and keeping. Call number Rue Faubourg Saint-Germain, à Trossamy." "How was it possible," I asked, "that you should know the man to be a sailor belonging to a Maltese vessel?" "I do not know," said Dupin. "I am not sure of it. Here, however, is a small piece of ribbon, which, from its form and from its greasy appearance, has the evidence of being used in tying the hair of one of those long queues of which sailors are so fond. Moreover, this knot is one which few sailors can tie, and which few besides sailors can tie, and is peculiar to the Maltese. I picked the ribbon up at the foot of the lightning rod. It could not have belonged to either of the deceased. Now if, after all, I am wrong in my induction from the ribbon that the Frenchman was a sailor belonging to a Maltese vessel, still I can have done no harm in saying what I did in the advertisement. If I am in error, he will merely suppose that I have been misled by some circumstance into which he will not take the trouble to inquire. But if I am right, a great point is gained. Cognizant, although innocent, of the murder, the Frenchman will naturally hesitate upon replying to the advertisement about demanding the orangutan. He will reason thus: I am innocent I am poor, my orangutan is of great value, to one of my circumstances a fortune of itself. Why should I lose it through idle apprehensions of danger? Here it is, within my grasp, it is found at Bois de Boulogne, at a vast distance from the scene of that butchery. How can it ever be suspected that a brute beast should have done the deed? The police are at fault. They have failed to procure the slightest clue. Should they even trace the animal, it would be impossible to prove me cognizant of the murder, or to implicate me in guilt on account of that cognizance. Above all, I am known. The advertiser designates me as the possessor of the beast. I am not sure to what limit his knowledge may extend. Should I avoid claiming a property of so great a value, which it is known that I possess, I will render the animal at least liable to suspicion. It is not my policy to attract attention either to myself or to the beast. I will answer the advertisement, get the orangutan, and keep it close until the matter has blown over. At this moment we heard a step upon the stairs. "Be ready," said Dupin, "with your pistols, but neither use them nor show them until I signal from myself." The front door of the house had been left open, and the visitor had entered, without ringing, and advanced several steps upon the staircase. Now, however, he seemed to hesitate. Presently we heard him descending. Dupin was moving quickly to the door, when we again heard him coming up. He did not turn back a second time, but stepped up with decision and rapped at the door of our chamber. "Come in," said Dupin, in a cheerful and hearty tone. A man entered. He was a sailor, evidently, a tall, stout, muscular-looking person, with a certain devil-dare expression of countenance, not altogether unprepossessing. His face, greatly sunburnt, was more than half hidden by whisker and mustachio. He had with him a huge oaken cudgel, but appeared to be otherwise unarmed. He bowed awkwardly and bade us good evening in French accents, which, although somewhat Neufchatelish, were still sufficiently indicative of a Parisian origin. "Sit down, my friend," said Dupin. "I suppose you have called about the orangutan. Upon my word, I almost envy you the possession of him. A remarkably fine and no doubt very valuable animal. How old do you suppose him to be?" The sailor drew a long breath, with the air of a man relieved of some intolerable burden, and then replied in an assured tone, "I have no way of telling, but he can't be more than 4 or 5 years old. Have you got him here?" "Oh, no. We had no conveniences for keeping him here. He is at a livery stable in Rue Morgue, just by. You can get him in the morning. Of course, you are prepared to identify the property?" "To be sure I am, sir." "I shall be sorry to part with him," said Dupin. "I don't mean that you should be at all this trouble for nothing, sir," said the man. "I couldn't expect it. I'm very willing to pay a reward for the finding of the animal, that is to say, anything in reason." "Well," replied my friend, "that is all very fair, to be sure. Let me think. What should I have? Oh, I will tell you. My reward shall be this. You shall give me all the information in your power about these murders in the Rue Morgue." Dupin said these last words in a very low tone and very quickly, just as quietly, too. He walked toward the door, locked it, and put the key in his pocket. He then drew a pistol from his bosom and placed it without the least flurry upon the table. The sailor's face flushed up as if he were struggling with suffocation. He started to his feet and grasped his cudgel, but the next moment he fell back into his seat, trembling violently, and with a countenance of death itself. He spoke not a word. I pitied him from the bottom of my heart. "My friend," said Dupin in a kind tone, "you are alarming yourself unnecessarily. You are indeed. We mean you no harm whatsoever. I pledge you the honor of a gentleman and a Frenchman that we intend you no injury. I perfectly well know that you are innocent of the atrocities in the Rue Morgue. It will not do, however, to deny that you are in some measure implicated in them. From what I have already said, you must know that I have had means of information about this matter, means of which you could never have dreamed. Now the thing stands thus. You have done nothing which you could have avoided, nothing certainly which renders you culpable. You were not even guilty of robbery, when you might have robbed with impunity. You have nothing to conceal. You have no reason for concealment. On the other hand, you are bound by every principle of honor to confess all you know. An innocent man is now imprisoned, charged with the crime of which you can point out the perpetrator." The sailor had recovered his presence of mind in a great measure, while Dupin uttered these words, but his original boldness of bearing was all gone. "So help me God," he said, after a brief pause. "I will tell you all I know about this affair, but I do not expect you to believe one half I say. I would be a fool indeed if I did. Still, I am innocent, and I will make a clean breast if I die for it." What he stated was, in substance, this: he had lately made a voyage to the Indian archipelago, a party of which he formed one, landed at Borneo, and passed into the interior on an excursion of pleasure. Himself and a companion had captured the orangutan. This companion dying, the animal fell into his own exclusive possession. After great trouble occasioned by the intractable ferocity of his captive during the home voyage, he at length succeeded in lodging it safely at his own residence in Paris, where, not to attract toward himself the unpleasant curiosity of his neighbors, he kept it carefully secluded until such time as he should recover from a wound in the foot, received from a splinter on board ship. His ultimate design was to sell it. And we will pause there.